The energy price cap likely to go up to £2,800 for the average household by October of this year. And joining me to discuss the policy side of this and what can actually be done is Ed Birkett, Head of Energy and Climate at Onward. Welcome back to the programme, Ed. Now, we're paying one hell of a price for deciding that we won't produce our own gas and oil, that we will rely on renewables, that we will import 50% of our gas. I mean, some of this problem, and not just this government, but successive British governments have left us as big net importers of fuel. Is that not a fair criticism?
Well, I think it's fair to look again at our fossil fuel production policy in the light of the current crisis. The assumption in Europe, and particularly in Germany, has been that we can rely on imports of gas from Russia, for example, and we've been increasing our dependence by building new pipelines. So I think it's right to look at that again. Clearly that geopolitical assumption was wrong. What the government said in the UK is that it wants to have a two-pronged strategy to increase domestic energy production. The first one of those is to look at producing more oil and gas in the North Sea. It's a declining basin, so the production from the North Sea has been declining.
Depends on the price a bit, though, doesn't it? Because the higher the price goes, the more of it becomes accessible.
Exactly, and there is a question, should we be prepared to pay a bit more so that we're getting more resilience and more of our own domestic production? And then the second part of the government's strategy is to produce more low-carbon electricity in the UK, things like wind, things like solar and things like nuclear. And the real benefits of those, particularly for wind and solar, is that the costs have come down in recent years. And for all of those technologies...
About time, many would say.
Well, quite. And for all three of those technologies, for wind, solar and for nuclear, the price of those technologies does not depend on the international price of oil and gas. So there's a good way there where we can insulate ourselves from that over time.
So you agree with me, we've made some big strategic errors over, well, it's 20 years plus, isn't it, that we've been on this course?
I think as the continent of Europe, certainly the decision that Europe as a whole has taken, because we have a European gas market, the decision as a whole that we have taken to rely on large imports of Russian gas has been a mistake. We can see that now. Even if those decisions were made with the best of intentions. And the question now is, how do we get ourselves off that Russian gas as soon as possible?
Well, we in the United Kingdom, and it's now Brexit Britain, and we're not part of an emerging European energy policy, have a massive gas field in the north of England. And I know you're very pro-wind. I'm more sceptical about wind, as you know. But the thing about wind is you need gas to back it up when the wind doesn't blow. What about onshore gas extraction? And how quickly? Because some people tell me within a year to 18 months we could be producing large amounts of gas in this country.
Well, I think that timeline sounds a bit optimistic, to be honest. We have had successive politicians since 2010 that have been quite keen on the idea of shale gas. If you think of George Osborne as Chancellor, Andrea Leadsom as Energy Secretary, they have been keen on the idea of promoting onshore gas, shale gas. But we've seen issues. We've seen issues with seismic activity, earth tremors, and so... As
you do with all extractive industries.
Well, the question is it at an acceptable level? And the government at the time took the view that they could not guarantee that there would not be large earth tremors. But if we don't do that, what can we do in the short term? Well, in the short term, your previous guest actually made a very good point, that in the immediate term, the only real thing that we can do is get money to the people who need it most to pay their bills this winter. Other small things we can do, people can look at how their boiler is set up, and for free they can work out, turn down the temperature of the boiler, so you still get the same amount of heat out, you have to put it on lower for longer, and it's more efficient. So you can get as much heat but with less gas. But in the long term, in the short term, it is incredibly tricky.
OK, Ed Birkett, thank you for coming on and making those arguments. What a mess we're in with our energy policy, we really are.